Nan's He-Man has grown so powerful that he now sits atop the chess.com Blitz leaderboard, above Magnus, above Hikaru, and boy did he let them know with this tweet. There's just no stopping this guy. The audacity, who knows where he's getting $1 million from.
Again, in the course, I have a saying about this position. So, our opponents play e6, and we don't really know if they are comfortable going into the French, because some of our opponents might allow us the chance to go for the French, knowing that we won't go to the French, because we think that they're comfortable with the French, meaning that they're going to be more comfortable in the French than we are in the French. However, they can also know that we are comfortable in the French and that we think that they are comfortable in the French, thus making us not go into the French transposition, thus letting them play e6 without actually having proper knowledge of the French. And that's why this course is the greatest of all time.
What did Magnus Carlsen do in response? Well, as all top grandmothers do when the challenge is laid down, they rise to it and they go a-farming. He jumped on chess.com, 9th of January, that's today. Who was his target? The up-and-coming youngster, Pranav from India, 18 years old. And this was the pick of the bunch, the pick of the games. I'm going to show you a classic and then we'll look at the chess.com leaderboards to finish. Love the drama. Hope you're enjoying this one. Magnus playing black, and after the king pawn is advanced, he plays the aggressive Sicilian. These knights develop into the game, and we get the very common these days bishop b5, Rossolimo. Pranav does it with a whoosh. Many of the top guild masters do that these days, and now we get the weird pawn to e5. Looks strange to leave the hole on d5, but you do gain this big clamp here. Light squared strategy versus dark squared strategy. It's exciting, and if you try and win a pawn, not working, you've got this classic counter shot and you win back the one in the center. So let's jump back. We've got no back cave today. I don't have that usual view, so if we go off on a different line, then I'll have to just let you know. Instead, we get castles played by Pranav. Magnus now goes bishop d6, and boy is that one weird, uncomfortable move. You can't quite put your finger on it. It's a bit like watching a Hans Niemann body scan. Something uncomfortable, and yet you're glued to it. You're drawn in, can't take your eyes away, similar to bishop d6. So now we see d3 played. The knight comes to f6. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse gallops into the game. Bonus points if you can name them. And after castles from Magnus, quick king safety fist bump, exploded out. They do it on their cameras. We see bishop c4. It tucks back to target this weakened square, and it sets up tactics. So Magnus goes h6, keeps an eye on this pony jump, but not to be held down, we see knight h4. Now it's normally a boo-boo, putting it on the edge, but it eyes some weakened squares, f4 on the way, and after Magnus goes knight d4, we now see f4 played. You could immediately go knight g6. This one is pinned. Pin and win, baby, as they say. But this is the one that's played first. Rah, they yell when they push the f-pawn. And after Magnus captures, the knight now jumps in, hits the rook. Does Magnus move it? No, he does not. Why not? Because if you do so, you are really strategically busted. After takes on f4, bishop recaptures, I was about to say pawn. Knight takes back, and you are dominating that d5 square. An iron curtain has descended. So we come back. That's why Magnus doesn't move the rook here. He sacks the exchange by playing pawn to b5. Big bad Bertha wants to eat herself some bishop flesh, and you have to react to it, because if this one moves away, the knight drops, right? And that's why we see knight takes here. You know, there was a threat to take and everything like that. You're probably thinking, don't you eat here? Well, it's coming. Patience, right? Because after knight recaptures from Magnus, now we see this knight take the rook here, and an exchange of prisoners is played. These are the top moves, so we won't deviate off the main line of the game. And Magnus is now worse, down an exchange, but as ever, he muddies the waters here, plows forth with g5. Andrea starts spinning the beats. We absolutely love it here, and it kind of looks like a Ging's gambit, just absolute chaos on the board. So e5 is now played by Pranav to kick that knight. It unceremoniously retreats, dad ashamed, but you can see now the downside of that move by white. It's opened that massive diagonal, and it just gets worse. g3 is played, really going for it. Now it is a good move, but of course you're critically weakening the king. Possibly it could come back to bite you. What do we see in response from Magnus? Well, he's in a very tough position. You know, if you capture, you don't even need to take back, but queen f3 is absolutely deadly. You're about to crash through here and you're hitting the rook. You know, it's just curtains. So we climb back here to this position. Not sure why I said climb. And Magnus instead plays d5, but it is not the best move here because you actually block this long diagonal. Really difficult for black to now drum up play. Meanwhile, white's attacking here, should take, best move, but not played. Who can resist going en croissant? It's what Pranav does, taking the pawn like that. If you've had a drink, don't worry, we see it too. But now Magnus can take, and his bishops come streaming into the game, giving counterplay. Bishop c4 is played to target the king. Magnus hits the long diagonal here. What a monster. And after queen h5, going after that pawn, and also hitting this one, double whammy. Magnus now forced to counter and defend with his queen. We start to see Pranav going wrong. This move is okay, very logical, spinning the bishop round to c3, and of course you don't want to be taking on b2 or this queen crashes through here. So Magnus counters with bishop e5, but now Pranav goes wrong because not only is Magnus threatening to check from d4, but he's set up a second, more devious hidden threat.
Mushrooms.
Now, how should you fight against everything? Well, the move is rook a to e1, and now if the check comes, you can block with the bishop here and no taking with the pawn, or the queen is attacked. And if instead you see this one played, then I've turned off the computer line right now. Let's turn it back on. On the one hand, you would think it's about takes here. No, okay, it's about rook e4 intercepting the diagonal. Fine, that's the key point. No f5 because this one is covered. Let's turn the engine off again before it crashes out my computer. It's lagging today because we didn't see, after bishop e5, Chewbacca's favourite move, the Wookiee one. Instead, pawn to c3 was played, covering the d4 square. So natural, but you guessed it, the themes just discussed. Magnus plays the killer queen c6, lateral slide, attacking, threatening mate, and now you don't have this defensive resource. What an attack. All of the feces just plowing. Yes, you leave this one to crash and burn, check the king, it steps to the corner, but where's the follow-up? Where's the kill? Where's the mate? You can't participate this one. Meanwhile, this guy's getting killed. What you should do now to fight against it, only defensive resource, is queen d5 or bishop d5. One or the other. You can go into this kind of endgame here. Here's a sample line, and when the smoke clears, you've got rook for 2 minors, level pawns, who knows what's going on. Obviously, Magnus would end up winning that anyway. But we come back to the game, because after king h8, we didn't see any interception. Instead, we saw this move of king f2, running like Forrest Gump, but now you can either take on g3 with check, or start with rook f8, hitting the promised land. The queen saves itself, offers the exchange, but Magnus takes here. That's a double check, so he declares check squared. Some people say check twice, or check checkity, or check times 2, but you usually declare that it's happening twice. The king now steps back to the square it started on, very miserable. Now this capture is played, king takes back, the queen comes into town. That is absolute carnage, and after bishop f3, we saw resignation because you only have one square, and that's a checkmate, shuts the trap. Awesome game. And what now do we see on the Blitz leaderboard, chess.com? Well, Magnus has come storming back. So has Hikaru for that matter. Hans' time on top was short-lived, and no news yet on whether or not they've taken him up on the challenge to play a match, $1 or $1 million. Probably it would look something like this if it did go down, but who knows, maybe we'll get the real thing one day. Hope you enjoyed. Do smash unsubscribe if you did, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.